Hey everybody, welcome to Live Fully, Lead Authentically. My name is Kurt Busch. I'm a co-founder of the Brimstone Coaching Group. Typically here with my coaching partner Chris Godfredson, but astute listeners are going to realize pretty quickly that Chris is not with us, but instead I've got a new friend with me. His name is Arky Jones. He is the creator of Personality Peak. It's a platform focused on helping people better understand themselves through personality insights, self-awareness, and personal growth. He combines personality concepts, stoic wisdom, and practical self-help to help listeners gain clarity, improve their mindset, and build a stronger relationship with themselves. Arky, you sound like our kind of guy. First, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here. What else do people need to know about Arky Jones?
Superb. No, super happy to be here. Excited. Thanks again. Um, guys, firstly, what I will say is that what I've tried to bring to the world has been a lifetime, and it's just been a lifetime of adventure and to be honest, making mistakes,
Mm,
wanting to do better, wanting to explore the self, and understanding what I found is this is the very, very foundations of it. What I've discovered is that the better I knew myself, the more responsibility that I took, the more self-ownership, self-authorship, and focused attention that I had, the better things got for me. And I don't mean that in some kind of material kind of way, although
yeah.
that seems to happen. But I mean that in a way of the same way a rising tide raises all ships, that I found that if I had a solid base, if I built my foundations really, really well, then it led me to live a better life. So what I started doing was let's say my early 20s, very early 20s, my first child was born. That was one big key. And
Mm,
then there was a few milestones along the way. And what I did was I started noticing patterns, repeating patterns in the self, in others, and in nature. And then that accumulated with a few things, and I'll get into them later. But accumulating a few things, but also there was something that sat with me that a lot of people felt, and by this I what I mean is that just not just in my anecdotal conversations, but trending across online topics on Reddit, on Twitter, they seem to identify as this fixed self, as in,
mm,
oh, that's just me, or this is who I am,
yeah.
and the evidence just stacked up against it. So I guess to answer the question, I'm someone who genuinely tries to hold themselves to maximal account, but I will not allow others to dictate my direction unless that direction is of benefit to me. Do you know it's so kind of def- self-defined person,
Yeah.
but in a way that understands the beauty of a tribe.
Yeah, I love that. You said a couple things I want to just pick at a little bit. Is that okay?
Yeah, no, please go.
You talked about self-awareness. We're going to come back to that in a little bit. But you just said something about patterns, right? That you noticed patterns in yourself and patterns in others. Can you say more about the patterns that you noticed in yourself and like where do you think those came from? How do you disrupt them? You say a little more about that?
Oh no, absolutely. So firstly, just let me get a little bit philosophical. So
Yeah.
what happened was is that as I became more self-aware, as I became more someone that wanted to understand myself, one thing I did that was I tried to create at least a little bit of solitude now and again, once in a week. And as I walked in nature, I would notice like um the birds flying together, particularly there's some type of birds where there's always a male and a female, and not about that, but just always together. I looked up at the stars, I looked at nature, and there was a symmetry in the stars. And the first time I saw the Milky Way, I never saw the Milky Way when I was in England. It was in Australia, and we were in the semi-outback, and it was the first time I'd ever seen the Milky Way. And I looked up and I was like, what is this? And
Mm.
I was lucky at the time. I had one of the old DSLRs, the
Yeah.
digital, yeah, and I was able to do like a photo, and often go back to that photo in its majesty. But in humans, what I was finding was that I was allowing others to influence me, like not just seeking external validation, but also like accommodating other people's patterns, often at the detriment of myself, because I felt it was the right thing to do. And I felt that I felt that maybe if I could just do that, it would be okay. And then
Yeah.
in the self, I might find, for example, let's say that once I'm over 40 now, and by the time I was like 32, I no longer enjoyed hangovers, but I would maybe just keep revisiting drinking alcohol in certain situations. The other thing is I don't particularly like going to busy places, and I noticed that there was certain triggers within my body of the autonomous system. So sympathetic, no, no, sympathetic nervous system triggers adrenaline inappropriately, the more I spotted these small things, the bigger the question was: is can I control these
Yeah.
patterns, or are they dictating to me my life's direction? And
Mm.
so, as soon as I realized that there was a pattern, I could then make very small experiments to rectify things. And what is and this is, I don't mean this is some kind of like big kind of like big note myself, or like I'm so good, but I can now go to shopping centers with absolutely no emotion whatsoever. It's just a shopping center, whereas before it would trigger this adrenaline cascade. So it was just, there was no one big like slap in the face, Kurt, but it was a series of small events that led me to, one, a symmetry in nature, and two, patterns within the self and nature that I realized that we could modify. Also, in my particular case, raising children, I would
Mm.
notice that I wanted them to be their best selves. And I
Yeah.
would notice that small corrections could change their entire outlook on the world.
Yeah, yeah, that's really good, Arky. Chris and I have a friend who will say often that we are ridiculously in charge of our lives, and I think I hear some of that when you talk about noticing the patterns and then breaking the patterns or changing the patterns. I hear you talking about some agency over those things. Is that right? Am I hearing you right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I believe that to be very true.
Yeah. Yeah. So here's the other thing. Let's go back to self-awareness a little bit. And I do want to get to personality peak. We're going to get there in just a little bit. Listeners, hang tight. You talked about self-awareness. So there's a Harvard Business Journal article that says 15% of Americans, I know you're not in the US, but 15% of Americans in our backyard, only 15% say they're self-aware, which is shockingly low, I think. Well, let me play devil's advocate. I'm going to ask you a question that I know the answer to, but I'm going to play devil's
Mm.
advocate. Why the heck am I going to do the work to be self-aware? Like it's hard. It takes a long time. It stirs up a lot in me. Why wouldn't I just kind of keep coasting through life, Arky?
Yeah, so look, just remember, if you remember this as a foundation for the self, as a foundation for your very being, then and then I will answer the question.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so irrespective of how the beginning began, so some would say there's Big Bang, some would say creation, it doesn't really matter. Irrespective of how it started, before the beginning was infinite
Mm,
potential.
mm,
And then light came and universe born. And we are made of the same infinite potential that made the universe in the first place. So, firstly, the very fact that you exist is a trillion to one. So, if you take that as a baseline and the gift of life as something that is bigger than any possible lottery win or monetary reward. It is, and I'm not trying to be exciting. I genuinely believe this to be true. I genuinely believe this to be true. That if you take that life is the biggest gift the universe can give you, and even if you want to break it down into a scientific thing, the fact that you can access consciousness and the stream of consciousness, the fact that our forefathers have, and I'm almost convinced we have a lineage of knowledge that comes down from humanity, and then we have an access to a external pool of consciousness. So both those two are an absolute gift. Now, where that comes into why self-awareness, I mean, it's almost self-explanatory, but I'll just come into something a little bit more human, a little bit more real. So I firmly believe where you put your attention is the direction that you will go in. So
Mm. Mm.
if you choose to put the attention onto self-awareness, what it does, it puts you in a situation where you are able to almost debate the self, you are able to be critical of the self, but also you soon realize that the only thing that you truly have control over is the self.
Yeah.
And in that moment, by understanding that, it allows you to let go. So if for nothing else, do it for selfish reasons because it's the
Yeah.
only thing you can truly control.
Yeah, yeah. Chris and I would say the exact same thing. That like there are a lot of times that we go through life and things happen to us, or someone responds or lashes out at us, and or makes us feel something, and it's so easy to like want to change someone, or so easy to want to say, well, this is their fault, and maybe someone has a role to play in it, but at the end of the day, the only thing I can control is my reaction and the way I show up and the way I manage
Yes.
my stuff. So yeah, that Arky, that comment is why you're here today. I love the way you think about this stuff. Um, well, that's not the only reason why you're here today. Uh, so most of it is because you look like Eminem, and I didn't ask if I could make that joke. I'm gonna assume I can make that joke because we did have that conversation. So, listener, if you're not watching this on YouTube, you need to go check out YouTube and leave in the comment if I'm right.
With what you just said, though, Kurt, that's where about the when people can define their self, it doesn't mean, so let's be absolutely clear. It isn't, and when you said other people can have it input, of course they can. Look, we were born of tribes, and without each other, we would never have survived.
Yeah,
And within that tribe, there was hunters, there was gatherers, and there was in between. And everything we see today, no matter how much it might drive us crazy, has value. Because let's just say this. So you have a stranger comes into a tribe, okay? You
yeah,
have the ones that immediately want to reject them. You have the ones that immediately want to take them in.
yeah,
And the thing is, both have got merit. There's a chance that that guy might be a bad guy and take all your berries and your stored food for his tribe, or there's a chance he might teach you a new technique on cooking or a new technique on weapon making, and
yeah,
and so you have that. And that this is an ancient struggle, and but in that there is a lesson in those decisions, and so I certainly would never dream to dismiss other people's value because it's extremely valuable. But
yeah.
at the same time, if you allow it to define you, you're in bloody trouble, mate.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, let's unpack this a little bit because you're hitting on something that I love. Chris and I w would often talk like we like the word tribe. We'll intermix it with community sometimes too. You know, we're in a community. Um, what? Well, let me back up. So in the US today, right, in our neck of the woods, there's this sort of radical individualism where like we're kind of self-actualizing everything. We kind of like define ourselves individually without our community or our tribe. How do you think about self-awareness and growing self-awareness specifically in a community of people? Like what is the value of the community to growing self-awareness?
All right. So, Kurt, firstly, I'll be very, very frank about this just to set the baseline, okay? So, what's happened is that somewhere around late 70s, early 80s, that and this was I was born 82, but this is I've read heavily on this subject,
Yeah,
that the value proposition in the West was changed to what can I do for you, which was our baseline, as the whole community of the West. Look at our history. We've fought each other, but we've also came together in times of catastrophe, and we always had each other's back.
yeah,
It's gone from what can I do for you to what can I get from you. Not everyone, but as a general society, it's gone that way.
yeah.
We attached a monetary value to everything. And then the other thing we did somewhere along the way is we got very, very comfortable. So we
Mm,
have it. Most people in the West have enough money where their basic Maslow's hierarchies of needs are met.
yeah.
And then what they did is, and by they I mean this system that's in place to sell us things that we don't need. They then told us that you are powerful, you are sovereign, and you just need this next product to be happy. You just need to move away. You need more money. You need both partners working. Let's not go into any gender biases here. Let's just say you need two income earners to own an average house now in America, in Australia, in England. So firstly, we're already fighting a battle of the machine. By the machine, I mean this kind of marketing industry
Yeah.
telling us what we need,
Yeah.
telling us where to put our attention, and telling us that we don't need anyone else. So I'm sorry, that's a really long answer, Kurt, for this question, but I just wanted to give some history on it. Now, you bring that forward to the modern day, and you've been now what seems normal and self-evident to us in this generation and my kids' generation was not self-evident to our grandparents. And so therefore that what that then does is it pushes you into a narrower and narrower frame. And the problem is the less connection you have, the more you think you need external validation through stuff, through cars, through houses, through clothes. Whereas if you have a solid, loving family and a good friendship group, and by a good friendship group, guys, I don't mean you have to be holding hands and singing Ging Ganguli every week. I just mean some people that you know that if crisis comes, you can help. And where else we used to do a lot better was we'd help each other move house. We'd
Yeah.
like help each other with roofing work, car work, and now it's just like call a mechanic. This is okay in times of peace, but
Yeah.
as the Bible, and this is not a Christian thing. This is just a foundational Western civilization. If
Yeah.
you sow the wind, you reap the whirlwind. And the problem is, if you pull too insular, if you believe that you are the center of the universe and there is no value in the community and the tribe, then unfortunately that will fulfill itself. And the whirlwind you reap is when you need it most. You don't have the people to call. But
Yeah.
also, what you will find is that if you are together with other people, that is probably apart from holding your own child in your arms, apart from maybe seeing your wife smile or your husband smile at something that delights them. There's very few things more satisfying than spending time with good friends.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really good, Arky. I appreciate your take on that. I mean, I know in the coaching world, Chris and I are always kind of bumping up against like this desire to be individuals and this desire to kind of like self-define without trying it on in community. And I think there's just something really beautiful about being in that tribe or in that community that can help us sort of uh, practice and try on these things that we're learning about ourselves to see if they're right, to see if they fit, right? To see if our tribe is going to say, "Yeah, that is who you are," or "No, what are you doing? That is not who you are." So yeah, I think it's really good. Thanks for saying it. Um, let's pivot a little bit. I want to talk about personality peak. T Tell me what this is. I know when you and I talked the first time, like I could sense in you like your energy raised, your posture shifted a little bit. Like you love this. You created this.
Mm.
Tell us what this is and why it's so important to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's about 10 years work in total. Before the personality journey, I wrote a book called Applied Stoicism
Mm.
and I wrote a book called Don't Give Two S Words. And they were kind of one. Applied Stoicism was like a very practical, applied it directly to me and just journaled it and then published the journal effectively. And the second one was more of a structured kind of self-help, but again, things I'd used to help myself and stuff we've talked about today, like the attention thing particularly, that taught me attention. And it taught me about the feed as well. So this was a long time ago. I saw the feed coming, and I've seen what it's becoming. It didn't surprise me. Hence, even though Australia's done a social media ban, my kids weren't allowed phones until they were 17. It was that simple. So I had seen this coming, and I feel the better for it. And just so you know, before I answer your question, my 20-year-old not long ago thanked me for not giving her a phone when she was a kid
Dude.
because she saw what it did to her peers.
Yeah,
So that was massive validation.
it's a big deal.
Yeah. So I mean I'm super happy with that. And so what I would say personality peak is, firstly, let me say what it's not meant to be. So it is not designed to be a psychometrically evaluated tool that is clinical in use. My entire proposition, and this comes from both of my grandfathers. I also served myself as well and was injured quite badly. I won't go into too much detail about it, but it changed my entire life in a moment.
Yeah.
Both my grandfathers as well served in the British military
Mm.
and in World War II. And the reason I say this to you is that in any given moment, your life can change, and understanding that and having tools for that is a wonderful, wonderful thing. But one thing that taught me was that if you are willing to look at yourself at any given moment, look at your shadows, look at your strengths, look at the way you interact with other people, but but at the same time, to do that is a big ask. So what
Mhm.
I developed was a six-dimensional framework where you can spend 3 to 5 minutes. You can take the test. It is almost as accurate as you can get, but at the same time, it's I want you to feel like you're playing a game. Because
Yeah.
I would argue the best lives that we live are the ones when we realize that this is a game, the game of life, and it's got it. You play for keeps. It is real. You play for keeps, and your actions have consequences. But if you play mindfully, you play with the right direction, then you're going to do well. There are going to be hits that come along the way. Of course there are. And as I think it was maybe Rocky said, like it will beat you down and it will keep you down if you let it. And
Mm.
and and it is so true. But what personality Pete can do is that, let's say, for example, you spent the last 25 minutes watching a feed on any social media channel.
Mhm.
That algorithm has watched you very closely, and
Yeah.
it is now pushing to you what it wants you to see based on your behaviors and based on maximal dopamine rewards.
Yeah.
If you then understand the way slot machines were made, do you call them slot machines in America? You know, the buttons they press. Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
If you look at the people that made social media, had heavy input from the same people who use the same psychology as slot machines and casinos, but slot machines in particular. And what it does is give you just enough mini dopamine rewards that it keeps you going and going and going. The only thing is, with social media, slot machines, you lose money, so that there's an end point. With social media, the
Mhm.
currency is your attention, and so
Yeah.
they keep you on, and just push stuff into your brain. This is and then about personality peak, this is where I was like, okay, so what could I do that could redirect my attention for 3 to 4 minutes, that is fun, is playful, is accurate? I use a slider system so you can select the exact percentage that you feel at the time, and also trackable over time. So people will revisit, because obviously I want people to come back
Yeah.
and revisit over time. It doesn't have to be every week, like every month, every 3 months, but it's trackable. That was my baseline. I also found I wasn't keen on the like the Myers Briggs with the 16, because the problem with what I found, the problem with 16 was that it was broad, that
Mm.
therefore it was, you might get a change once every 3 years, from a but fundamentally you could pretty much get that same label your whole life. And I didn't believe that either. I didn't believe that either. It's a very good test. It's very accurate, but it's very broad. The
Yeah.
big five wasn't fun enough. The big five went clinical. So I did it, and I was like, okay, great. You know what I mean? So what I tried to do was find as detailed a test as people could take, to give them a snapshot at that moment in time
Yeah.
across as many dimensions as was reasonable, because you go two to the power of, so every dimension you add, you double. So
Mhm.
4 dimensions would be 16, 5 dimensions would be 32, 6 dimensions 64, and then you can see 128 it becomes too big, it becomes unmanageable. So it was a sweet spot for detail, plus fun, plus accuracy, plus over time, with enough that subtle changes, you can see real differences within your archetype, quite efficiently if you are mindful about it. And then what I did is fundamentally I started mapping people over time.
Mhm.
And by people, what I meant is just looking up trades, interviewing folks, reading published papers, and short version is came to a hybrid system of a code and an archetype because I particularly enjoyed Jung as a philosopher. I've read a little bit of Freud as well, enough of Freud, but Jung stayed with me, and I developed a thing called the archetypical spectral model, and what that means is it's a spectrum. It's a spectrum, and then the archetype spectrum of archetypes. And so, what you get with it is you get an archetype, you get a code, but you also get an exact percentage of where you are right now. And the aim is it. You also get information of the trait of the archetype, but the aim was solely to put someone on the map in that moment and make them think. And then the only question I ask the listeners and you, Ked, is if you are doom scrolling right now, and the reason that is your attention is captured, is
Yeah.
put your attention to this, read it, and then be willing. So all I ask is be willing just to read it with an open mind. And by an open mind, I mean be as critical as you want because that's got you thinking. It's got you doing you. I Personality peak doesn't. It is. I believe it is highly accurate, and the feedback we've had is great. But it almost doesn't matter if by taking the action, if by looking at it, even if you disagree with it, but you make changes because it highlights things that its job is being done.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I mean, I think I love the posture of saying, even if the tool that I built isn't exact, it's still getting you thinking. I think I love that posture a whole lot, Arky.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, and I'm going to ask like, this is not an interview question. This is just two guys hanging out at a pub, right? At the end of the day, whatever the day is, whether that's career, life, whatever, at the end of personality, whatever that is, like, what do you hope for? Like, what is your deepest hope with the work that you're doing through Personality Peak and other work too? I mean, like you've shared a lot about your kind of posture, and your heart, but like, what's your hope in all this?
Well, let me tell you this, and let me tell you on a very short level. I'll give you a very short answer, and I'm going to give you a bit more of a hypothetical, a theoretical kind of deep theory behind it, and my true beliefs. But
Yeah.
on a short level, on an instant response, if you said to me, "Say this as short as you can," I would say, if when you read this, your life is 1% better than it was before you taken it, then that's all I could hope for. That's the short version. And just 1% increments of where you put your attention, and then you start moving towards it. That's all I could hope for because what I found is that we need to be very careful about how we allocate our active doing because you can be dominated by external forces very
Mhm.
easily. And
Yeah.
so basically put someone on the map where they can make a change. That's
Yeah.
that's what I wanted. Now, the longer answer is that I genuinely believe that we have created something in our cultures across the Western world that is not it is one of two things. Is one, it is enabling blame where blame is not due, where self accountability could come. I'm
Yeah.
and of course I'm not a Sith Lord. I don't speak in absolutes. Of course, there's times when you've been wronged. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Of course, if someone
Yeah.
comes to your house and burgles you, I'm not. This is not about that.
Yeah.
This is things you can control. This is things you can own. Okay, thanks, man. I just wanted to be clear. I'm not saying that tragedy never
Yeah.
happens, but
Yeah.
where society's moved is into a way of looking to point fingers for almost anything. And the more that I found that people take ownership of themselves, the more I find that they actually do the way they own it, the better their day goes. And I
Mhm.
think the other thing is that I am absolutely convinced that people far cleverer than me have figured out ways through mass media, through advertisements, to hijack our limbic systems, to hijack our dopamine systems, to hijack our adrenaline systems. And it's pushing us into a direction that we believe is self-evident. But the more I get in touch with myself, the more I get in touch with nature, the more I realize that isn't self-evident. And I'll give you a funny example. Like, we all might laugh about movies. We all might laugh about movies, okay. But over and over again, the more you watch them, the more they're trying to deliver this certain message, the certain way you act, the certain things you do. And they portray archetypes. If you look back to, like, a lot of them, they feed into narratives. They feed into stories that go back to Mesopotamia because
Yep.
those stories work. It doesn't
Yeah.
doesn't matter if it's true or not, they work. And so therefore you start to slowly, insidiously move away from you and
Yep.
into becoming what you think you should be because some other force has told you. And
Yep.
as technology's reach has increased, and of course my tool uses technology, and so I may sound like a hypocrite, and I'm aware of that. I'm aware of almost the cognitive dissonance in what I'm saying, but I do also believe that a tool that with its genuine intent to allow you to grow, allow you to self-reflect, has merit. But I also think that if people could just wake up and realize that they are the product these days, and you don't have to be. You can live a much easier life. And can I give you a real life example of where this
Yeah,
can
please.
can work? So I know I've been told Americans are quite bad for this, and I think it affects the whole Western world. But I years ago, and I did this myself before this study. I took on a self policy that unless there is an immediate risk to myself or my family, I will not react uh, disproportionately in any way, shape, or form. So a theory of unless there is an immediate risk, I will not react beyond what is the minimal necessary output.
Love
And
that.
so when people would cut me off in a car, I would often see people accelerate, give the finger, wave a fist, and even now and again get into a physical altercation. Now, now the thing is, what I realized is if I just back off, if I just slightly hit the brake, I may have lost 3 seconds out of my day. But do you know what? I don't think about it again the rest of the day, and I don't put myself and others at risk. Whereas if you react, the story writes itself. I don't need to explain that to everyone, but in doing so, you have given ownership of yourself to the person who cut you up. And as soon as you do that, you're no longer fully in control. And also, just from a human anatomy level, adrenaline dump, blood redirected from brain to the muscles, fight or flight, and you can't think clearly. And who wants to be in charge of a 2 ton, or in America's case, a 4 ton vehicle without without control? And another one. Do you remember another very quick analogy? This isn't mine. This is one of my mates told me once a long time ago when we were kids. So do you know sometimes when someone's high beam and the other person puts a high beam on? Yeah. And I never forget it. He goes, my mate goes, this we were 17 at the time because I went to do it. And all he said is, better one blind idiot than two blind idiots. And so meaning like, at least the other guy can see. And
Yep.
and I mean all these small things they add up to conclusions later on. But I guess what I'm saying is that fundamentally, if you realize that you are being told you are it's hard to fully explain, but your thoughts are an accumulation of our history, but also of current strategies. And or what I want people to do is be able to just take that step back and write their own story, but mindfully, understanding that even me, I understand that my thoughts are the thoughts of philosophers from the last 5,000 years, and also the thoughts of marketers from the last 2 years. But I try very well to dissect what can I actually influence, and then move towards that. Does that? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's really good, Arky. I mean, I was going to ask you another question, but you answered it already. I mean, I was going to ask you like, what would it look like if the world was a little more self-aware? And I think you just answered it with the headlight analogy, or with the guy in
The
traffic.
road rage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Chris and I would often say it like this, that self-awareness work is great for me and great for the person that's doing it. But ultimately, we believe like this is how the world changes. Like person by person, one person that doesn't carry around that road rage all day has the opportunity to change the world, because your impact when you do that is going to carry beyond just you. Your decision not to meet the high beams with high beams has the potential to have impact beyond just you. So I think that's really like that's where our kind of bread is buttered. That's our
Mm.
heart too. It always sounds so cliche that this work changes the world, but I think what I'm grateful for is the chance to get to talk to people who would say the same thing and don't hold it for themselves. Like I would never say Chris and I have the market of changing the world. And I've heard you say you don't own the market to change the world with your work either. So it's just super great to have this conversation. Um, Arky, I'm going to toss over a softball here. And maybe that doesn't land for somebody in Australia or from the UK. I'm going to give you an easy one to hit here. Cricket, do you play cricket?
Yeah. I do enjoy a good game of cricket.
So as Chris and I are both baseball people, I actually think I could love cricket. Like if we could have another longer, I think I could actually love it. It looks amazing. I don't know what the cricket equivalent is of like a slow pitch that's easy to hit, but I'm going to give you one of those right now. Uh, you've got the audience listening. What do you want to say to them? Uh, just how do you want to wrap up? Give them something that encourages or motivates or moves today.
Yeah, look, guys, let's say this, okay? And Kurt, I'll just speak directly then, just so I'm fit, yeah, yeah, so I don't think I'm being rude, okay?
Yep.
So guys, what I would say is that in life, there is a saying, I think it's memento mori. Remember, you will die. Now, that might be something that you feel scared of. That might be something you feel afraid of. But in doing so, in remembering the mortality, that actually means that every single day is an opportunity to live. And remember this, that, and I didn't coin this phrase, I think I heard it on a podcast, but if you can't leave it behind, it has to go with you, and someone offers you $10 million today, but you die tomorrow, then it's of no use. And it's about your life is incredibly valuable. Now, if you know that, if you take that as a baseline, and then you look at the direction that you're going, and you look at how you impact other people, you look at how your interface with the world is changing the very fabric of time and space around you, which it does, because many would argue that what you do is you manifest reality in, I don't mean in some kind of wishy-washy way. I mean where you put your attention is the reality to you. And many would argue that the universe itself create or God or whatever, the universe itself created consciousness as a way for it to see itself, to see its beauty. So by knowing that, by knowing that you've got such a gift, if you're in times of hardship, if you're in times of war, a time of peace will come. But it is to you to channel out that peace. But in doing so, you have to be willing to take the feedback that the world is offering you, but you have to synthesize it into things that can action for you. But if you are repeating patterns over and over again, and then you're regretting it, so let's say that you're seeking out let's say you're seeking out hedonistic pleasure, and you then the next morning you're like, why did I do that? But then again you want that dopamine cycle, you want that validate. It's up to you to break that cycle. It's up to you to look and be very, very honest with yourself. And there's one person you cannot lie to in the cold dark of night when nobody is watching, and it's yourself. And I promise you, if you listen here, the heart, you listen here, the gut. Don't listen to this too much. In these particular situations, something will tell you deep down something isn't quite right. And in that moment, in that moment, only you can decide the direction you go in. If you are genuinely happy with what you're doing, genuinely happy when it doesn't hurt anyone else, it doesn't matter. But if you know things could be done differently, and most of us do, then start putting your attention towards that. And I promise you things will improve.
Yeah, well said, Arky. How do people find you in your work?
So guys, if you wouldn't mind, my all my work at the moment is put out through Personality Peak, PEEK.com. It's a bit of a joke, like take a peek at your
Hey, I like that.
personality. I also have PEAK, but don't worry about that. That's another project. But short version is take a peek at your personality, personalitypeak.com. The quiz is free, completely free at the point of use. You will get valuable data. I've tried to include a decent summary of the entire framework, but it's about what you'll get front end is about 5%, but it's still a lot of knowledge. It's still a lot of knowledge. It kind of synthesizes it into nice bite-sized chunks. And if you sign in, if you log in, obviously your email will be required, but you can then for free track your archetype over time, and you can repeat the quiz as well. Now there's also all the socials and everything on the and basically all I want people to do is ask themselves, is 3 to 5 minutes of my time worth understanding myself a little bit better? And there's one other thing I didn't say. Can I just add it on at the end just
Yeah,
very
yeah, go
quickly?
for it.
Yeah. So I will say this that if you take the quiz, one thing it will offer you is blind spots, but it will also show you your strengths. We do relationships, we do because common things commonly happen. Okay, so
Yeah,
unfortunately, whether we like it or not, we are someone that can be patterned, but we can know our patterns and we can change. Now,
yep,
the thing I want to say is that one thing I want people to know is that your strength, your superpower, can also cast a shadow. And
mm,
so try and review this holistically when you review the self and ask yourself what can I do. And I'll just give you very, very quick example of my shadow.
yeah,
So I tend to see patterns incredibly quickly.
mm,
It's always been a gift of mine. I can track patterns incredibly rapidly. But in doing so, I often come to decisions incredibly quickly. And 80% of the time, they actually end up the best decision. I used to get frustrated when I'm in teams that people couldn't keep up or
yeah,
they didn't just settle on my idea quickly.
yeah,
After I did this research, I got the free thinker as my archetype. After I did it, I was like, there was something in there that said, do you let others give feedback? What I
mm,
mean is, and then synthesize that additional data and then make a decision with more points of data. And ever since I finalized this quiz, which was about 18 months ago, when I got it, I was thrilled, by the way. But but ever since then, I'm never the first to speak anymore. I listen to maybe 6 or 7 other ideas, and not always, but enough to have value. The new data that people have said actually changes my final suggestion.
yeah.
And so that the extra details help me pattern things better.
Yeah, great example. That is such a helpful example, I think, Arky. And I appreciate the shadow piece. I mean, it is easy to get hung up on this kind of work and think like it's all positive, but there is certainly a pendulum swing where we can go from the light to the shadow. So thanks for saying that. So I'll put links to that in the show notes. If you're listening to this, you want to know more, I'll put links in the show notes. Arky, thanks so much, man. This is a gift. I appreciate your posture. I appreciate your heart. Appreciate the conversation. Thanks so much for being here. Good talking to you.
Oh, it was absolutely brilliant, mate. I love it. Thank you so much.